Earl didn't move, not when the first punch was thrown, not when the second one came harder, sloppier, full of nervous overcompensation, not when the third teenager, the one with the cracked phone screen and something wild burning behind his eyes, spit words at him like they were bullets meant to reclaim the street they thought he didn't belong on. Earl just stood there beneath that flickering lamppost outside the liquor store on Jefferson Street, gripping a plastic bag with 2 cans of beans and a packet of black coffee. He blinked once, slowly, like time itself had bent around the moment. And maybe it had. Because if you're still watching this, if you're still listening right now, then you already know this isn't just another late-night mugging gone wrong. No, this is something else. This is one of those stories that feels like it escaped from somewhere, like it clawed its way out of a locked drawer in the back of America's mind, a place lined with forgotten wars, ghosted names, and the faces of men who were told they were heroes, only to come back invisible. No one talks about Earl, not the city, not the veterans' office, not even the block he's walked every day since '79, where the cracks in the pavement remember his boots better than any living soul. You probably never even heard his name. But now somehow it's in front of you, in this file, in this video, and you're starting to feel that cold ache in your chest, the one that makes you wonder whether what you're watching was even meant to be seen. Maybe it's the way those kids joked just a little too loud, like they were trying to scare off something deeper inside themselves. Maybe it's the way the camera, that silent security eye nailed to the corner above the liquor sign, twitched, ever so slightly when Earl turned to look at them. That's when something shifted. It was so subtle, like the air paused to hold its breath. And then one of the boys, Devontae, the youngest, froze mid-laugh and said, in a voice that didn't belong to him, "He's not what you think." No one else heard it. But the mic picked it up clear as day. And seconds later, Devontae was just gone, not ran, not dragged, gone, like a curtain had been pulled around him and sealed shut from the inside. You feel it now, don't you? That slow dread curling up your spine like it's been waiting for this exact moment. That eerie sense of déjà vu, like maybe you've stood in this same shadow before but didn't know to look up. Because somewhere in that flicker of security footage, in the way Earl finally dropped his bag and adjusted the sleeves of his faded army jacket, there was something old and humming just beneath the surface, like a dormant weapon, quietly reactivating. And the words he whispered right before everything went dark, words no one else could explain, still echo through every speaker, every screen, refusing to disappear. Not again. Now you're asking the question. The one no one dare say aloud. Who was he before he became the man who walks Jefferson Street in silence? And if that part of him is waking up again, then what's about to happen to everyone else? This isn't a story. This is a warning someone tried to bury, and you just dug it up. The moment Earl whispered, "Not again," the entire footage rippled, not like digital interference, but something older, something elemental. As if reality itself blinked in confusion. The screen froze for 0.8 seconds. Then, without warning, it skipped forward 10 minutes. No scuffle, no aftermath, no trace of Devontae. Just Earl standing alone in the middle of the sidewalk, sweat running down the back of his neck like he'd been somewhere else, somewhere not meant for the living. But when the clip was played back in slow motion by the corner store's owner, Mr. Ray, a strange hiss, too faint to be wind, too jagged to be static, slithered in. A whisper under the whisper. Someone or something said, "He remembers." And if you don't feel it now, if your stomach isn't tightening with the realization that none of this fits together, then maybe you're not listening close enough. Maybe you've already forgotten, just like the others. 3 days later, Earl showed up at the VA clinic on South Avenue, disoriented, blood under his fingernails. The same jacket now burned at the sleeve. He kept repeating the same phrase. "I was at the jungle again, but there were no trees." Doctors ran tests, no signs of stroke, no drugs in his system. But the voice memo app on his flip phone, an old Motorola with a cracked hinge, had a file saved that Earl swore he didn't record. A woman's voice, soft and shaking, spoke over rain that didn't exist. "If you're hearing this, it means the loop failed again. Tell him not to go near the boy. It always starts with the boy." Earl doesn't know any woman with that voice. Doesn't know why the timestamp on the recording says 1973. Or why, when played backward, the voice calls him by a name that isn't his. Captain Wilder. Earl hasn't been Captain Wilder in 52 years. He doesn't remember anyone calling him that since the Tet Offensive. But that's the thing, isn't it? Trauma doesn't forget. It hides. It waits. It erodes memory until the gaps start to feel like facts. And Earl has gaps. Whole chunks of years that feel like someone else lived them in his body. Faces he doesn't recognize in old photos. Letters written in his handwriting that start with, "We're not supposed to talk about the sand." And now, every time he turns on the radio, the same song plays no matter the station. White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. A track he hasn't been able to listen to since Nam. A track that wasn't playing on any station in the city that night. Enter Ellis, a former medic, or so he claims. Says he served with Earl in Cambodia, even though Earl swears he never crossed into Cambodia. Ellis shows up outside Earl's apartment on a Sunday morning, wearing a red windbreaker, carrying a manila folder with no name on it, and eyes that never blink long enough. He speaks in riddles, quotes scripture, misquotes news headlines from 50 years ago as if they happened last week. But the strangest thing, he knows Devontae's name, knew it before it hit the local reports, says he was there. The kid didn't vanish. He went home, Ellis says, smile trembling on his lips like a bad signal. Back to where they all go, the in-between. That's why they always send us back after the war, not to rest, to watch. But how could Ellis have seen what happened? The camera footage wasn't released. It was wiped within hours. The original corrupted, overwritten by a city maintenance update that no one seems to have authorized. Ellis shows Earl a copy anyway. From a different angle. An angle no one thought existed. Taken from inside the store freezer, looking out through layers of frost. In the frame, Devontae standing still as glass. Earl not moving. Then behind them, both, a figure in jungle fatigues walks into frame and stops. No face, just a void where memory should be. And this time it's that figure who whispers not again, right before the screen tears in half. Earl doesn't know what's real anymore. Ellis brings coffee in thermoses that taste like ash. Says things like, "You ever get the feeling? Your nightmares are trying to remember something you forgot on purpose." And Earl's been seeing things. Not visions, worse. Familiar shadows, like someone keeps rearranging his apartment when he sleeps. Like someone else lives there when he's not home. The alarm clock changes times when he looks away. His reflection sometimes lags behind. And there's a new photo on the wall he never hung. Him in uniform, yes, but standing next to a woman with a blurred face. In the background, Devontae as a child holding a red balloon. Earl asked Ellis who the woman was. Ellis just looked away and muttered, "That's the problem, man. You're trying to remember things the war made you forget." But the truth? The war remembered you. Now the lights flicker when Earl gets angry. His hands shake, but only when someone says Devontae's name. And just last night, someone knocked on his door at 3:33 a.m. and whispered through the wood, "Captain, the jungle's here, we need you. So tell me this. If what Earl saw was just trauma, just old ghosts in a tired mind, then why do the clinic files on Devontae show his birth year as 1962? And why was that same red balloon found on the floor of the clinic hallway, tied with a tag that read, 'Loop 7 failed, try again'? You still think this is a story, or have you started to feel like you were part of this long before you pressed play? And if that's true, then what happens next time you hear someone whisper, 'Not again'?" Earl sat hunched over the faded pages of an old journal he'd found buried beneath a loose floorboard in his apartment. One he hadn't noticed before, despite living there for years. The leather cover was cracked, the ink faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably his own, or at least the man he thought he was. The entries spoke of confusion and fear, but also moments of clarity so sharp they cut through the fog like a blade. He read aloud one passage, voice barely a whisper. They watch from the edges, but never close enough to be seen. The boy's the key, but the lock keeps changing. For a moment, everything clicked. The missing footage, the strange recording, Devontae's disappearance. It wasn't a random act of violence. It was a pattern, a cycle repeating itself through time and memory. Earl felt the icy fingers of hope tighten around his heart. He thought maybe this journal was the hidden truth, the memory glitch finally corrected. Maybe someone had left this for him to find, to break the loop. He grabbed his coat and headed for the city archives, a place thick with dust and forgotten records, the kind of place where secrets like this hide under layers of bureaucracy and neglect. Hours passed as he sifted through yellowed newspapers, old police reports and community bulletins from decades ago. Then he found it, a story from 1974 about a boy who vanished in nearly the exact same spot on Jefferson Street. The name matched Devontae, but the dates were wrong, too early by exactly one generation. The report described a witness, a man in military fatigues seen walking away from the scene, whispering to the empty air. That witness disappeared days later, never found. His name scratched off every official record. Earl's fingers trembled. The headline screamed of a real unsolved mystery, buried beneath years of silence and cover-ups. For a fleeting moment, Earl believed he was finally free, finally uncovering what no one dared tell him, what the city had tried to erase. He called Ellis, his only tether to the past that might not be real, and together they stood on that cracked sidewalk beneath the flickering lamppost. They talked about how memory lies, how trauma masks truth, but also how sometimes, just sometimes, the past reaches out to shatter the present, and then it happened. The air thickened, the shadows stretched unnaturally long, and from the corner of his eye Earl saw a figure, tall, still, watching. Not Ellis, not any man he recognized. Something else, something older, something waiting. But before he could react, his phone buzzed with a video message. He played it, heart pounding. It was a shaky recording from an unknown source, security footage from the very night he first encountered the boys. But there was something new, a frame frozen mid-motion showing Earl, but younger, wearing the same jacket, standing beside a man who looked exactly like Ellis, except Ellis had been dead for over 20 years, according to every record Earl had ever trusted. And the man in the video wasn't just standing there, he was whispering, words impossible to make out but unmistakably a warning. And then, the single detail that unraveled everything. In the background, behind the two men, a red balloon floated, tethered to nothing, casting a long, twisting shadow that stretched across the cracked pavement like a warning written in smoke. The video ended abruptly with a flicker, and the screen went black. Earl's breath hitched. He blinked, looked at Ellis, who no longer seemed quite real, too still, too calm. A memory surged in his mind, an old hospital room, antiseptic stinging his nose, a nurse's voice whispering a name that wasn't his, a pain in his chest like the weight of unseen eyes pressing down. The pieces didn't just fit. They bled into each other, creating a mosaic of fear and uncertainty that clawed at the edges of his sanity. He wasn't just remembering. He was reliving something meant to be forgotten, a deeper force watching, waiting, feeding on his doubt and pain, a presence never named but always felt, like cold breath on the back of his neck. And then the worst part hit him, a truth so terrifying it forced a rewind on everything you've seen so far. What if the story you thought you were watching, the man, the boys, the vanished kid, was never real at all? What if it was just the surface of something far darker, an elaborate mirage built to trap memory itself? What if the real mystery isn't who Earl is, but what he's been made to forget? You're not crazy. They lied to you. And now, as the screen fades, you realize you have to watch it all again, because nothing is what it seemed. Not the whispers, not the shadows, not even the man you thought you knew. Every frame, every word, every silence hides a lie that's waiting to swallow you whole. Look closer. Look harder. The real story is just beneath the surface, and it's watching you back. There's a silence that stretches beyond the moments you think are quiet, an echo not just in the empty spaces between sounds but inside the spaces between thoughts. Earl isn't alone. You don't realize this at first, how could you? Because the threads that tie the others to him are woven in shadows, whispered in code, glimpsed only when the light flickers in just the wrong way. But they're there, scattered across cities and states, connected by something older than any memory, something that refuses to stay buried beneath the layers of what the government never released. They watch from the cracks in reality, slipping between the frames of your screen, across the static of found footage from 20 years ago, and even through the blurred edges of dreams that refuse to fade when morning comes. You were right all along to question what you saw, because it was never just one man's story. It was a network, a web spun tight around every life caught in the same invisible grip. In the dim glow of a cracked phone screen, a message appears, not from a number, but from nowhere and everywhere at once. A string of symbols that look like ancient glyphs but flash in a digital language you can't quite place. Half code, half riddle. They're sent without context, appearing when you least expect them, when the noise of your day dips just enough. For you to hear the hum beneath the surface, the pulse of something watching, waiting. You don't understand the message, not at first, but you feel its weight in your chest. A silent summons, a secret signal that you are no longer just a witness, but a participant. Others receive these symbols too, and in the shared silence between those who see, a strange communion forms, a shared dream where places blend and time folds back on itself, where the faces of the missing flicker like ghosts, and their voices speak in tongues that curl around your mind like smoke. The dreams are not comforting. They are warnings. They are questions posed in a language only the fractured can decipher. Ellis becomes more than a shadow in Earl's fractured reality. He's a cipher, a fractured reflection of something neither fully human nor entirely gone. But then, from an entirely different vantage point, a third perspective emerges, like a threadbare broadcast seeping through static. This observer watches not from within the story, but from the edges of all stories. A voice caught between worlds that nobody knows but everyone senses. It is a quiet voice, one that refuses to be silenced, whispering truths hidden beneath layers of doubt, memories altered, identities fractured, control exercised through the most intimate of prisons, your own mind. The observer's presence is unsettling because it refuses to fit neatly into the narrative you thought you understood. They hint at a larger force, a silent puppeteer pulling at the strings of memory and reality alike, feeding on the fragile boundary where one ends and the other begins. Every revelation is a mirror reflecting deeper shadows. There's no single truth, only fragments scattered across time and mind, and those fragments are being gathered, curated, hidden away in corners of the world where no light reaches. The ones affected, like Earl, like you, are pieces of a puzzle that nobody wants solved, pieces watched, manipulated, and sometimes erased. You catch glimpses in moments that feel like glitches, a voice in a recording that warps unexpectedly, a face in a crowd that vanishes when you blink, memories that shift without warning, as if they've been rewritten. The more you try to hold onto what you know, the more it slips through your fingers like sand tainted with something dark and endless. You start to wonder, what is identity when the memories that shape it can be rewritten? What is truth when every proof you hold can be fabricated or erased? And who is in control when the lines between observer and participant blur into a dizzying spiral? The question isn't just what happened to Earl or Devante or Ellis. It's what happened to all of you, to the collective story that's been whispered but never fully told. And in that question, the weight of dread becomes almost unbearable, because the answer hints at something vast and indifferent, a force that does not care who remembers, only that the story continues. The cryptic symbols, the shared dreams, the found footage, they are pieces of a language spoken not aloud but felt deep beneath the skin, a language that you are only just beginning to understand if you dare to keep watching. Because once you do, once you open that door, there's no turning back. The past isn't past, the watchers aren't watching from afar, and the control you believed you had was an illusion all along. So here you stand, at the edge of something that wants to pull you in deeper, toward a truth that might break everything you thought you knew. And the voice of the observer lingers still, barely a whisper in the dark. They've been here all along, watching, waiting. And now so are you. What you do next will change everything. Earl sits alone in the dim room, the weight of all he's uncovered pressing down like a suffocating fog. The symbols, the whispers, the flickers of memory that don't belong. None of it feels like pieces of a puzzle anymore. It's more like fragments of a broken soul, scattered across a landscape where time and self dissolve into shadows. The mystery has shifted. It's no longer about what happened or who is watching. The question now is why. Why this unseen force chose him, chose them, and what it means about the raw, fragile thread that holds us all together. The thread we call being human. There's a fragile line stretched taut between hope and despair, and Earl is standing on it, feeling it tremble beneath his feet. The truth he chases isn't just some hidden fact or secret government file. It's a mirror, held up to his own soul. Every distorted memory, every vanished moment, every shadow in his mind is a reflection of pain, fear, and the desperate human need to be seen, to be remembered, even when the world tries to erase you. The silence he's lived with, both the silence of others and the silence within himself, is a confession, a wound left open. And now, that silence demands to be spoken. In a voice barely more than a whisper, Earl confesses to the emptiness he's carried all his life, the loneliness masked by the weight of old battles nobody saw, the quiet war inside that left him broken long before these strangers came to break him again. It's not the ghosts of the past that haunt him, but the forgotten parts of himself, the man he was, the man he wanted to be, and the man the world refused to acknowledge. The line between victim and survivor blurs until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. As the room darkens and the memories swirl like smoke around him, Earl faces a choice. To believe in the cruel design of fate, to surrender to the void that promises oblivion, or to fight, knowing that fighting may mean facing truths so raw, so piercing, they might shatter what's left of his mind. But what if that shattering is the only way to wake up, to peel back the layers of deception and fear that have kept him trapped in a nightmare, not entirely his own? This moment is less an ending and more a terrifying awakening, a rupture in the fabric of everything he thought was real. It's the moment where you, watching, feel the cold breath of revelation against your skin, where you realize that the story you've been drawn into isn't just about Earl, or Ellis, or the others hidden in the shadows. It's about the fragile, fragile nature of truth itself, and what happens when it slips through your fingers like smoke, refusing to be held, but demanding to be seen. And as the screen fades to black, the last words hang heavy in the air, echoing. In the silence you never noticed before. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.